Ford's Aspire and Honda's Amaze, well, the only similarity is that both of them start with the letter A, but in terms of personality as well as overall talents, both these cars are very different. What do I mean by that? Well, you'll find that out on the show today, and by the end of the review, I'll tell you which one you should go for if you're in the market for an entry-level compact sedan. So stay tuned for the next 9 or 10 minutes. But before that, here's a small request. Please do follow me on Instagram. My handle is Ashish Masih 1. It's flashing below your screen. And you can also follow the team at Autoportal_India. We'll give you a lot of updates, a lot of behind the scenes, as well as a host of other stuff over there. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thanks for watching. Well, so let's talk about the Honda Amaze first. In terms of the overall design, this car definitely has the advantage. This one feels a lot more fresh and a lot more modern than the Aspire. That said, quality levels are more or less the same, and it is at par with the Aspire. In terms of utility places, it is a good car. You get a couple of beverage holders right here. There's a huge tray where you can keep your cell phone and wallet, and you also get big bottle holders in the door. And the seats are pretty much the same as well. It's really neck and neck between both these cars in terms of the overall quality as well as the ambience. The only difference is that car gets a few more features. This one doesn't have the same kind of features that the Aspire gets. It doesn't get 6 airbags as an option, and neither do you get automatic wipers. Now let's jump in the back seat and find out which one is better. Well, so I'm in the back seat of the Amaze, and headroom is quite good. Kneeroom also is pretty generous. And really, again, it's really neck and neck between both these cars in terms of space at the back. The only advantage that the Amaze has is the fact that it feels a little more wider than the Aspire, and you'll prefer to have your occupants in this car because it feels wider, and also the seat squab just feels a little more supportive than the Aspire. So in terms of advantage, it's the Amaze which has a slight edge over the Aspire when it comes to the backseat comfort. Well, so the first thing that will really impress you about the Aspire is this. Let's do that one more time. Well, this kind of a solid thud noise is not available on any other car in this segment. It really feels like a very solid and very reassuring car once you get inside. And in terms of the overall equipment, you get a whole host of features. You get automatic wipers. You get this lovely touchscreen, which is by far the best on any car in this segment. And you also get the choice of 6 airbags. And you also get decent place to keep your water bottle. You get a couple of big bottle holders in the door bins, and you get 3 of them here in the middle. So it is a nice car for those long highway trips. The seats, as I just said, are at par with the Amaze. You can't really choose which one is ahead. And now let's jump in the back seat and find out which one has the advantage. Well, so here I'm in the back seat of the Aspire. As you can see, headroom is quite okay. Kneeroom also is pretty decent. The only thing is that the seats themselves don't feel as comfortable as the ones on the Amaze, even though in isolation they're quite okay. But since we are comparing today, they don't seem as comfortable as on that car. The other thing is that it doesn't feel as wide as the Amaze does. So yes, if you prefer to have people on the back seat all the time, or if you yourself prefer to sit in the back seat, you'll definitely want to go with the Amaze. This one isn't bad in isolation, but for comparison's sake, it's the Amaze which has the better back seat. Well, let's talk about the boot of both these cars, and it is a clear advantage to the Honda because this one gets a much bigger boot. It's 420 litre boot, and not only that, you also get a much larger aperture. It's also a lot more broader than that car, so you can really load in all your stuff without any hassles. In fact, if you have to drop your mother-in-law back to the airport this is the car you'll prefer because this one has more space, and of course she'll be carrying a lot more bags with her. Or you can also do the other way around and tell her to take the rickshaw because the Aspire doesn't have the same space as the Amaze does. Well, so just like the Aspire, the Amaze also comes with a 1.2 petrol and a 1.5 diesel, and you'll enjoy both these engines. The diesel isn't as silent as the one on the Aspire, so that's something that you need to be careful about. And on the highway, it does tend to become a little noisier than that car. In isolation, it's quite okay, but yeah, since we are comparing, that one is a lot more silent. Well, so in terms of overall driver involvement as well as ease of driving, it is this car which feels a whole lot easier to drive because the steering wheel on this car is nice and light. The gearbox, the clutch, everything is nice and light no matter which engine you choose. And some might say that it's not as engaging to drive as the Aspire, but for someone who wants an easy, hassle-free and light car to drive with light controls, the Amaze is the car to go for. In terms of overall steering wheel feedback, it's not as heavy or as communicative as the one on the Aspire, but that said, it is a decent steering wheel. It gives you decent feedback, and you'll also feel nice and okay and comfortable when you're driving this car's steering wheel. So it is a nice and easy steering wheel to drive. What you also like on the Amaze is the excellent visibility all across, because the side view mirrors are nice and chunky, and the window at the back, the last window, is also a lot bigger, and it isn't as slanted as the one on the Ford, so you get a much better view of whatever is happening behind your back. So yes, in terms of overall visibility, it's a nice car. Now in terms of ride comfort, both these cars are pretty similar. This one has the softer suspension setup, so at slow city speeds, this one soaks in the bumps very well, and it doesn't feel as if some of those badly passive roads will enter the cabin. On the highway though, it is the Ford which has the advantage, because it feels a lot more planted, it has a tighter suspension, and it also doesn't allow too many rumble strips to enter the cabin. So it is the Ford which has the advantage out there on the highway. But in the city, it is this car which definitely feels a lot more comfortable and a lot more easier to drive when you're driving, of course, within city limits. Now in terms of engines, both these cars come with the similar setup, 1.2 petrols and 1.5 diesels, and the gearboxes on both are pretty similar. The gearbox on the Amaze is neck and neck in terms of usage. Yes, the steering wheel is slightly behind that in terms of overall feed, and it doesn't have that same kind of driver involvement, but it's a nice and easy steering wheel to use in isolation. Overall, in terms of giving a score, I'll give the Amaze a score of 89 in the driver involvement department and driving dynamics, and I'll give the Aspire a strong score of 90. That one definitely is a better car for keener drivers. This one though is a better car for people who simply want to relax and drive a hassle-free car. So it's between either one. It's between apple and oranges, but this one definitely I'll give it an 89, and that one a strong score of 90. And I'm sure once you drive these cars side by side, just like I've driven today, you will agree with my score sheet. Well, so the thing that you really like about the Aspire as soon as you drive it is the fact that it really does feel like a very driver-focused car, and no matter which engine you choose, the 1.2 petrol or the 1.5 diesel, both of them are very refined units and really make driving this car a joyous affair. It really feels like you're driving a proper hot car, and in that way, it is really a car which will give a smile on your face and put a smile on your face. Now, the 1.5 diesel engine makes about 100 bhp, and it is a very good engine in terms of refinement. And it's also a very petrol-like engine to drive, because it starts making all its power very low in the RPM band. And this one starts making its power around 1500, 1600 RPM, unlike the Amaze, which takes about 2000 revs to get going. What you'll also like is the very crisp steering wheel. It's a very nice steering wheel. It's a steering wheel which will simply put a smile on your face. It's a sublime steering wheel, very communicative, and definitely feels very nice and accurate to drive. It's very well weighed too. Neither is it very heavy that you start feeling tired in the arms, and neither is it so light that you will feel very nervous when you take this car on the highway. Other than that, what you'll also like is the fact that the gearbox is very crisp. The only thing is that the diesel version of this car doesn't come with an automatic, unlike the Amaze, which gets automatic on the diesel. So in terms of the variants, there's a little more to choose on the Amaze than it is on the Aspire. But yes, in terms of driving pleasure, this one definitely feels good. What you'll also like is the highway stability of this car. When you're driving this car out on the highway, this car feels rock solid, very reassuring, and you'll really enjoy the drive, because you'll be sitting in total comfort. There's very little that unsettles this car's ride or its composure. So it is a very good car, and in the city also it does manage to soak in most bumps, and it never really feels skittish on the road. So that's something which most buyers will truly enjoy when they drive the Ford Aspire. Now let's talk about a couple of negatives on this car. The one big negative is that the side view mirrors are really very small, so that's something that maybe Ford should fix, because they don't really have a very good depth of view. You have to move around your head to check out which car is there, so that's something which is a bit of a negative. And the other negative is that the beige interior, or the beige fabric, tends to soil rather easily, something which in Indian summers can be a bit of a negative. So those are two negatives of the Aspire. But other than that, as I just said, it's an enjoyable car to drive. It's very refined, both in the petrol and diesel versions. It's good in terms of fuel economy, and the steering wheel, the gearbox, as well as the clutch are nice and easy to operate, which makes it a driver's delight. And the ride quality also is very good. In terms of the driving department, I would rate this car overall ahead of the Amaze. So this one definitely gets a strong score of 90 out of 100 in terms of sheer driver involvement as well as an engaging drive. Well, so overall, in summary, both these cars are very unique and different from each other. It is the Aspire which has the better driver involvement, and it also offers you more safety kit in the form of 6 airbags, and also feels a little more solid in terms of the build quality. That said, the Amaze offers you more boot space. It also offers you better rear seat comfort as well as space, and the Honda badge definitely in India has a more premium look and appeal to it than the Ford badge. But what I'm essentially trying to say is that this is a better car for people who drive themselves in the city and want a hassle-free ownership experience and hassle-free drive experience, and the Ford is a better car for people who simply want to drive a fun car. So it really is between choosing a fun package and choosing one which is a sensible all-rounder. And before you say that I'm being very balanced between these manufacturers, I'll ask you to go and test drive both these cars side by side, and I'm sure you will agree with my verdict. Now, before you start debating with me, I'll end this video review right here. It's bye for now, and hope to see you soon.